Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to today's webinar on construction on site and BSc T levels. We can see that people are still sort of registering and logging into the system. So we are going to give it another 60 seconds or so, and then we will make a start shortly after 2 p.m. So welcome to today's webinar. Good afternoon, everyone. It's just gone 2 p.m. People are still sort of logging on, but we are cautious of time, so we will start with today's webinar. So welcome. This webinar will cover T levels, and it'll cover an on-site and BSc perspective, and we've got some key updates to be informing you on today. So we welcome you all to today's webinar. This is just sort of a brief agenda that we're going to go through, touch on some introductions, cover COVID-19, look at the milestones, where we are, where we've come with the TQ development. Then we're going to give you some new updates with regards to the construction and BSc routes. We'd like to also talk to you about working with us and the launch of our new employer industry board, which is a construction and BSc initiative combined. And then just a bit of a touch on for support and guidance, connecting with us. And what we're going to try and do today is allow some significant time for some Q&A where we can as well. So moving it on, my name is Jason Halmer, Technical Advisor for Construction with City and Guilds. And today I have my colleagues, Rob Mallender, who's also a Technical Advisor for BSc. We have our Industry Manager and Lead Industry Manager, Celine Visram, who is the Industry Manager for BSc. And we also have our colleague, Michael Scarrett from EAL, who is a Product Specialist for EAL. So, welcome to all of us. And we look forward to answering your questions later on in the webinar. So just to quickly touch on COVID-19, because we are in the midst of it, and although T level still continues as normal, it's still a high point on every agenda. So just to try and refer you to a couple of key areas, obviously we have our website page where all of our COVID-related information is around taking tests at home, mitigation, etc. So please, refer to the website for any information you might need, and also check out the FAQs, because a lot of the questions people have are more often or not answered in the FAQ. So that was just to sort of present that slide to you and let you know that it's there. And if you have any queries relating to COVID-19, please refer to our email address, which is product.cs@cityandguilds.com. So where are we? There's been a lot of work going on lately, and on the 1st of June we submitted our milestone 2 to IFATE, of which we're awaiting feedback shortly, and then we will be progressing towards milestone 3, which is regards to getting full approval and our full submission to IFATE and Ofqual, and that'll cover everything. We've got more validation sessions coming up, which we'll cover later, which show the validation of our TQ content further and some sample assessment materials as well. So again, we'll touch on those a bit later on in the webinar and presentation. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, Rob Mallender, who's going to come in and talk about the new updates with regards to the TQ content.
Hi everyone. So some of you may have seen this slide before on this structure. This is the construction on site. So no real change really to the structure of construction on site. We've still got that core component. That's going to be a core component which delivers the key principles which run across all the occupational specialisms really, a lot of the construction safety stuff, the scientific principles, that type of thing, which you'd expect in the construction core, is then assessed by an external exam and an employer set project. So looking like that construction core obviously be delivered in the first year, may start delivering some of the occupational specialisms, but that construction core will be assessed at probably the end of the first year before they have to then choose one of the occupational specialisms you can see on screen, which is carpentry and joinery, plastering, bricklaying, and painting and decorating, all at level 3, obviously. So after the core, one occupational specialism is chosen, and then that occupational specialism is assessed by a synoptic assignment, which is a practical assignment with obviously some theory involvement in there, at then the end of that second year of that product. So if we have a look at the next slide, which then shows you how BSE did look. So this has changed, but I just wanted to show you how things were different really. So this is how BSE did look. So for BSE, we've got the construction core element in there. That's now been merged with the BSE core. So we've now got just one BSE core. So what we've got on that, in that component now, is all the construction core content, as well as some specialist stuff aligned to BSE, some of the scientific principles and some of the actual key principles for safety, which are more aligned to BSE, as well as some of the legislation, which is then combined into a BSE core. And again, like the construction core, that's assessed via an external exam and an employer set project. That will be done at the end of the first year, a little bit like the on-site. And then the learners will then progress into their occupational specialisms. And as you can see from the slide, initially in BSE, they had to choose 2 of the occupational specialisms you can see there on screen. And that's the bit what's changed slightly. So I'm not going to dwell on this one because it has moved on. So if we move to the next slide, I can go through then how the update and what the update is and what the changes are. So you've still got the core, the BSE core, let's not forget that. But then these 4 specialisms can now be delivered as a standalone specialism. And they'll be, so you'll do your BSE core, and then you'll choose, there's other options on the next slide, but if you choose one of these 4, you don't have to do another specialism. It can be delivered as standalone. So you've got gas engineering, the electrotech engineering, the electrical and electronic equipment engineering, and the protection systems engineering. So they can be delivered as a standalone specialism, and then that synoptic assignment at the end will assess that specialism. That practical sort of trade test synoptic assignment at the end will then assess that product before completion. So there's 4 standalone, and then on the next slide, as you'll see, some of the others have actually been paired. So these occupational specialisms will be delivered now as a mandatory pairing, and the student will be required to complete both assignments, one for each occupational specialism at the end of the programme. So we've got 3 pairings. We've got plumbing and heating on the bottom right. This plumbing and heating is mainly domestic plumbing and heating. There is a little bit of commercial content in there. It more or less aligns with the plumbing and domestic heating apprenticeship standards. So it does start and look at some of the maybe some of the boosted stuff and largest type hot water systems and things like that, but only probably in scope with the plumbing and domestic apprenticeship standard as we currently know it. So we've amplified that content so it matches that standard a little bit more, and then hopefully the transition for learners who've completed this product, the transition into the apprenticeship will be slicker. And then we've got a heating, engineering and ventilation one. That's the same heating outline content, but that's been amplified slightly different now. That's going to be amplified so it matches more the industrial commercial heating element of the apprenticeship. So it's the same core content, if you like, the same outline content we got given by the T-level panel, but we've had discussions with that group, etc., and feedback from sessions we ran at the end of Milestone 1, which sort of driven it into this way. We've now got this more industrial commercial heat and vent, if you like, T-level, And then the third one, a natural pairing again, like the heat and vent, the refrigeration and air conditioning, is now a mandatory pairing. So the difference being, what we're going to do to those, and what we're doing at the moment for Milestone 3, we're actually removing any overlap. That content will then be merged, so it's delivered slicker. So you're not got to deliver and repeat things in both specialisms. But there will be at the end 2 assignments. Now, what that looks like, it might be 2 sections to finally one combined assignment. We're not quite sure yet. We're going to be taking feedback on that very soon. And that's the type of thing we're going to be talking to you about in some of the future slides, about how we can get people involved in that so we can make that fit and work for your delivery network. So if you've, let's say, done refrigeration and air conditioning as the pathway, the occupational specialisms now, as your mandatory pairing, at the end of the program, you'll have a refrigeration synoptic assignment and an air conditioning synoptic assignment. They might be merged and delivered in the same week, month, period, whatever. It might even be in the same bay, but we're going to have to separate them out so we can give a result for both aspects. That's what the IFAKE, the employer group, want from that. So that's how BSC's changed slightly at the moment. So, you know, these things are still progressing. We're going to be working with yourselves hopefully in the future and getting a little bit more feedback. And as things progress, things may change slightly again, but hopefully then it'll be a bit more fit for purpose product. And hopefully, as you can see from the BSC, I think that has progressed into a better product, from taking feedback from the key people and the key stakeholders we work with to shape that into something which we can now deliver, I think. So that's the BSC update for you there.
Cheers, Rob. Thanks for that. And welcome. Afternoon, everyone. So as Jason showed you on the earlier on slide, just around milestones in terms of where we are today and where our future milestones are indeed going to be required in terms of some of your validation and input. So just really a thank you to everyone, obviously who's on the webinar today, but thanks to all of your colleagues as well in terms of your input and provider input into the development of the technical qualification so far to date. So in terms of where we are, we've had employer and provider input alongside Milestone 1 and likewise alongside Milestone 2. So the idea now is between almost now and the middle of July, we are going to need validation around almost formalizing and finalizing the final elements of that technical qualification. So the idea is that we are going to be hosting some sessions. We are going to be hosting some of those sessions on Teams or GoToWebinar. And those sessions are going to be fundamental to the final shape of what that technical qualification is going to look like, because one of the primary objectives that IFAKE have set, both CNG and EAL, is to ensure that validation meets industry requirements. So that means trade associations, employers, as well as the delivery network in both Wave 1 and Wave 2 providers. So the idea is, obviously, we'll use sessions like these to look at the various aspects of the qualification and the technical qualification that we've produced so far. And it's a way of you being involved within those sessions and critiquing exactly what we've done. And those sessions so far have worked really, really well. I know some of you that are on the webinar today have engaged in various ways and have given us some excellent input. Next slide, please. So what we also did was a call to action around the employer industry board. So this is something that we've put together ourselves and in collaboration with the EAL. So we've gone out to a number of our stakeholders and a number of our employers that have worked across apprenticeships, in the various apprenticeship forms, whether it's refrigeration, painting and decorating, electrotechnical, and as well as some of the employers that have been working with us to validate some of the content around the TQ. So there was a real need and a demand, not only from IFATE, but obviously industry-wide, that a group of employers and key stakeholders come together to use this kind of focus group to look at all of the facets within this particular sector. So grouping both BSE and on-site together and creating an employer industry board for both construction and building services. And you'll see on the next slide that we've got a number of organizations who have already participated within the employer validation and are looking actually forward around helping us for milestone 3 and beyond. So this employer board, obviously initially it is going to be looking primarily at the T level and the T level milestone that we will need to complete, but obviously beyond that, the idea is to look at how we can help our provider network, so wave 1, wave 2 providers. We also know that within the T level, this sits outside of the TQ, but there is a work placement element that needs to be done as part of the overall T level. So that is going to mean that both the providers are going to be working with DFE, because that's something that the DFE are going to be picking up. But it's also imperative that we work with the providers, so with yourselves. We also work closely with the employer links that we would have created through this employer board. But it's also an area where we can help you, because obviously we know that you've also got some excellent links regionally through your own employer network links as well. So it's about almost joining up that triangle together to make sure that we've covered a lot of the occupational specialisms across both on-site and obviously within building services. You know, there are going to be some areas where refrigeration and air conditioning might be, because we know it's quite a niche area, it's an area where we might have to push further on. So some of those links that we've got with some of the colleges that already deliver the refrigeration apprenticeship standard, that's something where we can link into. And obviously Jason and myself, as well as Mike on the call, that's an area where the three of us are going to be concentrating on. It's an area where we can work with you. It's an area where we're going to be working closely with the employers, as well as the Department for Education, because the Department for Education are picking up this piece around the work placement. It's something that we are all going to have to work together. So obviously on this slide as well, you'll see our details, both Jason and myself, as well as Mike as well on the previous slide. But it's something that we would really welcome your input around this, and we would encourage you, if you can, to circulate this slide, particularly around your regional employers wishing to engage with us and wishing to obviously come onto this board, albeit it will be virtually to begin with, and hopefully as things progress over the course of the next few months, we will be hosting some regional employer events around the country. Next slide, please. So yeah, so just on some of these are just some of the organizations, not all of them, but these are just some of the organizations that have already committed in joining the employer industry board. And you know, there are a number of others that wish to do so as well. So again, just to recap, you know, we would welcome your input into this, and yeah, look forward to working with you. Next slide, please.
Okay, so thanks for that, Salim. This is just a short section of the webinar, just to give you an update of some future webinars we've got coming up, and we'll hopefully be, you know, constantly providing you with new updates. You know, we don't want to keep going over all information, but you know, any key new updates that's coming, like the BSE one, as Rob mentioned earlier, you know, they will be they will form the basis of future webinars. So we have another one which will be quite generic again on the 13th of July, and then we have two that will start in September, and these will focus on sort of the countdown, and it'll form another structure similar to what we're planning to do with regards to more Q&A, to look at how, as City and Guilds, we can support our centres with regards to the launch of the T-level. So it's looking at a 12-month countdown, and then there'll be future webinars and future events that will be hosted between City and Guilds and the EAL moving forward as well. And hopefully, you know, we'll get more, as time moves on, like Salim said, more face-to-face events moving forward. But if you'd like to register for those webinars, please just follow the links that are on the slide deck there. And this presentation will be getting sent out following the webinar, so there's no need to be copying down details. Now I'd like to welcome sort of my colleagues back to the forum, and what we're going to try and do now is basically open it up for discussion. You know, what is it that City and Guilds and EAL can support you with now and in the future? And we've just listed a couple of topics with regards to key themes that's come up from previous webinars with regards to site cards and progression opportunities. So even things that are outside the scope of the TQ content, you know, we are trying to provide support to our centres with that. So myself and Salim and Rob and colleagues from EAL attend meetings with IFAIT and DFE constantly with regards to site cards and progression. And that dialogue between us is really positive and is moving forward at a good pace now. So these are just sort of some key themes that you can post questions about should you wish. So I'm going to pause just for a second and allow colleagues and people in attendance to post any questions that they would like to. And then what we'll do is I'll pick up the questions and I'll ask them, and I'll sort of post them to Rob, Salim and Mike from EAL accordingly, and hopefully we can get some answers for you. So we'll just pause it for about 60 seconds, allow people time to type in any questions that they may have.
Thanks, Jason. Just a reminder, everyone, your questions tab is on your little toolbar at the top. It's something you can type in there. So any queries, questions, or comments or anything, we'll then have the opportunity to answer them before we move on. Thanks.
We've got some really good questions coming through. So again, we're just going to give it another 30 seconds or so, and then hopefully, you know, we'll be able to answer them accordingly shortly. So thank you very much for your questions that you're posing. Thank you for the questions that you've posed so far. I am going to sort of bring colleagues off mute now as well to try and answer them as best we can. So just looking at the first question from Alex, consultation on the implementation of the new curriculum, what does it look like in the syllabus so we can get a feel for the content and structure? So we have got a new draft content of TQ, and hopefully we'll be able to send out links shortly following this webinar. It's still just in the consultation and review period at the minute, but we have got a slide further on as well, which is from an earlier webinar we did, which demonstrates basically the structure of a T-level. So Alex, we will refer to that slide later on, and hopefully that answers your question later. If it doesn't though, please post another question, and we'll try and answer it accordingly. A student at level 3 from Neil. Level 3 say carpentry could come straight in with no experience. Yes. So this is direct entry onto this qualification, and they do have 2 years to develop those hand skills as well. So the occupational specialism would run simultaneously with the core content. So you'd be looking at developing those skills over a 2-year period. I hope that answers that for you, Neil. This is one I'd like to post to colleagues from Diane. Do you think COVID will affect the number of placements available for work experience side of the programme? Mike or Rob or Salim, would you like to come in on that one?
Yeah, it's Rob. I'll make a comment on that. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be difficult. Obviously, we're not talking till sort of September 2021. We're kicking off with this programme. Hopefully things may have settled down by then. Obviously things are going to perhaps have a bigger impact. Maybe construction sometimes one of the ones which does lag a little bit getting back going. It has a little bit of a lag and an impact on that. But we are starting to build the relationships now, I believe. We're working with the industry bodies, as Salim mentioned earlier on. That's the purpose of us setting up this, this employee forums and building in trade associations and things like that, linking in with all EAL and Mike's contacts, etc., so we can build a network of employers, so we can improve that. We understand it's a difficult part of centres delivery. Getting somebody out there and getting them work experience in our industry is a difficult one. So we're trying to put that in place now, so when this kicks off, we have got the industry contacts to be able to support centres.
Mike, is there anything you'd add to that, mate?
No, I think Rob's covered it there, really. I think at the end of the day, it's an unknown with COVID-19. As Rob said, it is not until over 12 months, 14, 15 months before we start with this. So we'll just have to keep an eye on what the government's saying, and hopefully we'll be clear and be able to move forward with it.
Yeah, and the Construction Leadership Council as well, I think it announced last week or early this week, their plan to, sustain the industry, construction industry moving forward as well. So, everyone is taking it seriously. Work placements, hopefully, it will, COVID-19 may open more doors and more opportunities moving forward as well. So, without a crystal ball there, and hopefully we've answered your question in some form, but I think it's going to be a case of, watching this space, government guidelines, plus, what the industry is planning moving forward to keep it sustainable. So another one from Alex: has the syllabus been sequenced to allow Ofsted best practice? With regards to sequencing the TQ delivery, as centres, you'll have free rein on that. So, after you've reviewed the content and when the assessment windows will be available, then you should be able to plan your syllabus and the sequencing of your syllabus accordingly. And hopefully that's what we'll be able to cover on future webinars. So, when we get closer to the 12-month launch, those are the type of things that we can start picking up moving forward for them webinars as well. So, that's a great point for us for future webinars with regards to how centres may want to structure that syllabus. So again, I know it's probably not the answer you're looking for, but it will be covered on future webinars. But basically, centres will have opportunity to sequence the syllabus or the TQ and the content delivery as they see fit, in line with the assessment windows, and that the assessment windows must be adhered to. Another one for Rob and Mike and Celine: can you confirm that BSA has 4 standalone specialisms where learners will only have to study 1 specialism and not 2? And that was from Gail.
Yeah, apologies if that wasn't clear on that first slide there. There's the 4 occupational specialisms which are now standalone. So yes, they only have to do 1 of those specialisms. They don't have to choose 2 of those. Obviously, then if they choose a pairing, there is 2 specialisms in that pairing. So the first slide, we're sending these slides out. The first 4 listed on the first slide, yes, you can do them as a standalone. Not now. You don't have to do 2.
Okay. Another. So I know that one's been answered. So Gary has been. So with regards to progression, again, a very good question, and one that we are in constant dialogue and discussions with IFIT about. No decisions have been made yet that I'm aware of. But basically, the T level is not a vocational qualification. You know, it doesn't demonstrate competencies as such. So once learners have completed the T level, what it'll allow is it'll allow a route into industry where they can further develop their skills and knowledge in order to make them vocationally competent. So whether that's a progression onto an apprenticeship or, like you say there, progression into an NVQ. Accordingly, once they get into industry, yes, is the answer to that. They will. This isn't a vocationally competent qualification. You know, they will need to demonstrate that moving forward. So, you know, there will be, you know, more opportunities and hopefully for apprenticeships, but you know, there will be a market there maybe for NVQ onlys as well.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, Jason, I think in BSc we are now finding, and it's from discussing things with people like yourselves, you know, the delivery network out there, we are finding in some instances now the outline content, there is little bits missing to allow it to seamlessly link into apprenticeship standards. And I'm only speaking for BSc. We are having to drop in a little bit more content perhaps in some areas and maybe remove a little bit from others, so they can enter that NVQ when they get employment at a suitable level. So that's what we've got to do now. Once we've got these products finalised at the milestone 3, if you like, we've then got to finalise the mapping into the apprenticeship, and not until then can we then say, well, if you've done a T level, you've got to then do X, Y, and Z to become fully NVQ competent. So it's difficult because everybody wants to know where will they end up when they've finished this T level, but it's difficult for us to say that until we've got 100% nailed on final content, and that can be finally mapped into the apprenticeship standard content, and then we can identify what's missing. So that's sort of the process now. When we've gone through milestone 3, that's more or less finalized content. Then the mapping will then be finalized, then we'll be able to give centres a heads up at what stage they'll probably enter the competency-based NVQ.
Brilliant. Just another one from Alex there about the learners getting direct entry onto this and be at level 3 after only 2 years. There is more GLH attached to these qualifications as well, just to make you aware of that, Alex. But also just to let you know that it isn't, IFIT have their employer panel, and they lead on the structure of the qualification and the outline content. So with regards to how employers are going to react, it is the employees that have set this prior to Sitting Guilds being awarded the contract. You know, the outline content was set, and we just amplify that accordingly. But you know, feedback such as that is valuable, because we can take that back to IFIT accordingly and give them an update with what our customers are seeing and the feedback that is coming from customers. And ultimately, like Salim said as well, you know, we do have validation sessions where, you know, with EAL, where we bring in industry and we bring employees on board. They have a look at the structure, they know about the content of the program, the structure of the qualifications and TQ content accordingly. You know, and we get all that feedback, and ultimately we feed that back to IFIT and DFE. Hence, you know, the big change that's happened with BSE. That just doesn't come about automatically. That is through, you know, engaging with you guys, engaging with industry like we have, and then Rob, Salim, and the guys from EAL, Mike, and his colleagues, we feed that back to IFIT, and then ultimately, you know, a decision was made to then split the occupational specialisms within BSE and group some others as well. So, you know, this is why, like Salim said, the feedback is so important. Because then we can feed that back to IFIT with a little bit of oomph behind it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, just further on that point as well, Jason. Obviously, we want to make sure that learners are treated fairly either way. So, a 16-year-old jumping onto a T-level, we want to ensure that by the end of the 2 years, if they, for instance, have taken the electrotechnical specialism and completed that successfully over 2 years, that has to be mapped into the electrotechnical standard, because that learner should not have to then go and start from the beginning of that standard. They would have done, I would imagine, quite a bit of the underpinning knowledge that sits behind that standard, and obviously that would then be shaved off their time in terms of the electrotechnical apprenticeship.
Yeah, thanks for that, Salim. Another great question from Alex as well. Yes, if you are a smaller provider and you are looking for some efficiencies within your curriculum structure, this does allow an opportunity for, especially with regards to the core, because it's common across all trades. If you are looking to combine groups, bricklayers, the construction groups, or even with BSc or BSc accordingly, you will have the opportunity to do that, because obviously the core content is the same. So if you are looking for efficiencies, there is an opportunity there. Alex is kind of setting up our next webinar for September, really, because this is the kind of things we'll be focusing on the 12-month countdown. With regards to 1,800 hours over 2 years for T-levels, how many hours are attributed to the core and how many for the chosen trade for on-site? So with regards to the core and the on-site was 500 hours and the core was 400 prior to the last validation that we did. However, since then, ultimately, we've got the feedback from our centres around the GLH and from our employers, and that's gone with regards to submission too. And again, we await feedback from MyFate on that. So without sort of, until we receive official feedback from MyFate, we can't put in or we can't mention any of the updates accordingly from that, unfortunately, until we have clarification and the green light from MyFate to put on that. So yes, Paul, I don't know if that answers your question or not, because within that 1,800 hours as well, going back to a previous question, we do have a slide that we can share with you, which looks at how the 1,800 hours on the program and how that can be structured with regards to tutorials, maths and English, and any other extracurricular activities such as the license to practice, elements that you may need for some of the industry as well. Could even include things like CSCS for the construction craft, and accordingly for BSE. So it's got that autonomy in that, to design a curriculum that suits your learners accordingly. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, and I think just to elaborate on that, sorry, Jason,
yeah,
on BSE, mate, I mean, it is developing all the time, as you say, and I think there was 500 hours originally for the BSE core, and then they'd got 2 specialisms at like 420 each. There's big change there now, because we've now separated those specialisms out, so we've now got 4 standalone, so we can probably allow to put a little bit more content in them, so it maps into that apprenticeship better and make it an equivalent to then the ones which are paired. And then the paired ones, we can make sure the content which is overlapped between the 2 specialisms in that pairing, we remove that overlap, so then there are hopefully a similar sort of level of guided learning hours, even though in some areas you've got 1 specialism and in some areas you've got a pairing, you've got 2. What we've tried to do is link those pairings together, so there's the overlap can be removed, and hopefully then a similar delivery model can be used. It's going to be difficult though, we're still taking feedback on that, and that's, when we put something out there for these sessions, which Jason's mentioned already and Celine's mentioned, it's crucial we do get that feedback, because as Jason says, that BSE wouldn't have changed. It's no good sort of myself and the relevant colleagues from EAL, Mike, etc., saying we don't agree with it. We've got to give proof to the IFATE panel, etc., that the delivery network and our employer network doesn't agree with it, and the justification for change. So if you like, if nobody gets involved from the employer and the stakeholder network, things will trundle on nicely. City and guilds will get a product out there quite easily, but that product might not be fit for purpose. So what iFate are ensuring is we're making sure we get the relevant feedback at relevant intervals during this development process, so we can make sure that when it does go out there, people have been consulted and it's hopefully then a fit for purpose product.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Rob. We don't seem to have had any more questions come through. I am keen to give people another opportunity. So what we'll do is we'll move on with the presentation. We do have another section where we can focus on Q&A. So please continue to post your questions in the questions tab, and we will hopefully pick them up in a few slides time. But just to close this sort of slide to bring this slide to a close, there will be a follow-up following this webinar where we will put this presentation out there and send it across to you. But ultimately, you can also sign up for T-level updates. So if you follow the link there, scroll down the web page slightly, and there is a section where you can sign up for T-level updates. And that's not just sort of BSc or construction specific. You know, there could be general updates that we put out accordingly. So, you know, please feel free to register for those links, for those updates via that link. And ultimately, a bit later on in the slide as well, there's some other contact details where you can get in touch with construction and BSc colleagues accordingly. So we will pick up any more questions further on during the presentation. So these are just some of the supportive links that we've put out there. So there is a short introduction or video to the T-level content and the T-level qualifications, and that link will take you to them accordingly. We do have some draft specifications, which is our version 2.0, hence Milestone 2. We will send them out with this presentation if we can get approval to do so. If not, we will be posting them via the social media platforms when we can. And ultimately, we usually put them on a hidden website page so that we can send out the link accordingly. So if you'd like access to them, and you know, our colleagues would like access to them, please feel free to get in touch with us via the emails that are coming on to the next slide, and we'll send them out accordingly once we get approval to do so. Then finally, there is a quick survey. I know obviously people's time is precious, but again, like Rob's mentioned, Salim and everyone else, your feedback is so important to us. So please, you know, complete the survey accordingly, and then we can analyse that feedback to drive these qualifications and move everything forward. Again, as I mentioned, these are the updates, so, and the email addresses where you can get in touch with us. We also have a construction LinkedIn group. So if you are on LinkedIn and you want to be a part of the group, please follow the link and we can add you accordingly. And we post so many updates in there, whether it's been about mitigation, as we've been doing previously, whether it's about T-levels, EPAs, etc., etc. And we also try and engage people on there in discussions and try and get some discussions going. So when lockdown first hit, you know, we put a post on there. What are people doing to engage our learners in e-learning? And a few colleagues, you know, posted some sort of hints and tips and some platforms that they're using, so it was really useful. Ultimately, if you're on Twitter, you can follow us with regards to construction and BSc, and you know, there's tweets and updates going out on that. Or, you know, if you just prefer an email, you know, you can get in touch with us at construction@cityandguilds.com or buildingservices@cityandguilds.com, and all of the TAs manage those email addresses respectively, so you know you will get a response. And again, as I mentioned previously, you know, if you want an update on T-levels or any City and Guilds product, at the bottom of any City and Guilds webpage, you can click the link and register for email updates. And that brings us to the final Q&A.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, we're going to just pause and take a few questions. I'll just pick a couple at what's been coming through. So by all means, keep typing your questions in. We're going to give it a few more minutes. We've got sort of 15 minutes left we can use if people need that time, but we're not going to drag things on unnecessarily. So type any final questions in. We've had a question coming in saying, well, a comment really, that they don't think that, you know, maybe a 2-year program will produce a skilled learner in most cases. Concerned with maybe de-skilling the workforce. I think just to respond to that, we're not looking to produce a skilled person who can then go out there and work. This is not an MVQ. So the key, I think, to this is we've got to work with yourselves and get feedback so we can eventually progress this learner and they'll then enter that apprenticeship at an appropriate level so they'll not have to do a lot of reassessment and stuff like that. So the further we can take them into that journey, when they get the job, they might just have to then do some of the more technical areas of the MVQ and the performance units out there on site. So we are looking to take them in at a relevant level, if you like, not necessarily take them in there fully competent. We've also had a query on if the T-level isn't vocational competency and a learner then needs to undertake further study, so progressing to the MVQ in effect, will that be funded? It's a really good question, and what we're doing at the moment, we're working with IFA and DFE and people like that to try and make sure that is. We've already flagged that at the very early stage from one of the initial launch ventures. That was a very key issue which centres raised. So we're trying to progress that to make sure it is funded. That's all we can probably give an update on at the moment. Obviously, if they progress into an apprenticeship, it needs to be a funded apprenticeship. Just because they've already got a prior level 3 qualification shouldn't disadvantage them. It should be the natural progression route. So we're trying to work with the relevant organisations, and the relevant organisations are keen to get that in place because obviously they want T-levels to work, and it's going to be across the board, that, not just for BSc and construction on site. So that's them couple of ones. Have we got any more coming, guys, we can answer?
Yeah, so again, just to re-emphasize that it's not about de-skilling the industry or the workforce. It's to do the opposite of that. It's to upskill. When you look at the content that's within a T-level and how it is pitched a step above where previous level 3s have probably been at. As Rob's mentioned, about them progression opportunities, that dialogue with IFA is very, very positive, and between Sitting Guilds, EL, IFA, DFE, and we hopefully will have some information to put out there soon. But that will have to come via the government regulatory bodies, unfortunately. But yeah, that dialogue is very positive and it's ongoing. CSCS, again, I previously mentioned the dialogue, and Salim will verify this, and Mike from EL. The dialogue with regards to CSCS is, again, it's constantly ongoing. It is very positive. It's progressing really well now, sort of coming at the end of, well, I'm saying the end, coming out of the latest lockdown of COVID-19. So CSCS is another one, a bit like watch this space once we have some more clarity from CSCS on how it could look. But with regards to a possible curriculum element, again, we talked about license to practice. CSCS could be a great addition to that. And we're also looking to align and make sure that our core content and the health and safety elements within our core content is aligned to the CSCS and the level 1 qualification currently. So that mapping exercise has been taking place.
Yeah, so just again on that, Jason, as well. So we are working very closely with CSCS. We've had a number of roundtable discussions with CSCS in terms of on-site, but also the skills provider card operators that work for BSc as well. So that would be ECS, JIB Electrical and Mechanical, as well as BESA. And the overwhelming majority obviously understand the need of learners having access to site around work placement. So they are willing and are looking at producing and developing some kind of card for learners to do their 45-day work placements. And what that looks like is still being looked into and mapped out, but there is a general consensus amongst all of the skills card providers that that there is access, that they will have access should learners need to do their work placement on a commercial site.
Yeah, I think this next one is for BSc. What reassurances can you offer providers that by the end of the mapping process that a T-level will map apprenticeship standards as closely as possible?
Yeah, well, I think we're very aware that these students, candidates, if you like, want to progress seamlessly into an apprenticeship or higher education, whatever it may be. But the common method and progression really will probably be an apprenticeship. So we're working very closely to ensure that we do keep T-level as close to an apprenticeship content as possible. So I'll use an example. When we've merged the plumbing and heating now into one paired pathway, if you like. We've actually looked at the apprenticeship standard content and included some more content into that pairing. And at the minute, it's looking like, you know, they might go in at something like phase 2. I mean, don't go quoting me on that. It's early days. We've got another milestone, and we might get some, you know, some increased feedback on that when we start developing things further. But we're doing that for all the curriculum areas, really. We're finalising the content, and we're trying to sort of position them where we think they might end up. If there is a little bit of content lacking, we might be including a little bit more content in some areas, so it does map a little bit better. So that mapping has started in some cases already, but we can't like finalise that mapping until the content is 100% complete, obviously, and we can't really launch that until the mapping is the content is 100% complete. So I hope that answers your question. If not, Gary, drop something in the box. Not a problem.
Here's another one. When do you expect to have your feedback about what level a student may enter an NVQ or apprenticeship program post T-level? Very good question, and at the minute we don't have an answer on that. Again, sort of colleagues and at City and Guilds and EAL attend these meetings, but until it's sort of agreed by IFATE, DFE, even Ofqual with regards to what that'll look like, it remains to be seen. But again, this is where, you know, your engagement, Chris, and other colleagues on the webinar is vitally important. So if, you know, further posts or further webinars are put on or sessions are put on, please, you know, get your centres, your staff, engage with us or yourself and give us that feedback, because that is the concrete evidence, like Rob and colleagues has mentioned previously in the webinar, that we can then take back to them. And you know, especially for construction craft, because ultimately a T-level is level 3. Apart from carpentry and joinery, all of the others, the apprenticeships are pitched at level 2. So, you know, what does progression look like from level 3 to level 2? And then ultimately, what will that learner have to do? What will the funding be? What will the employer be expected to do? You know, so all these wrinkles are currently being ironed out, and will probably continue to be ironed out again, because, you know, T-levels will start 2021, and ultimately we have a 2-year period before the first round of T-level learners will be coming out of that process and looking to progress. So it would be great to have an answer soon. But again, you know, we've got to be respectful of the timeline and other priorities such as COVID at the minute, with regards to that. So as soon as we have an update, guys, and you know, our centres and our customers all know accordingly. But again, please engage with us in that process as well, or let us know if you're happy to engage, because your feedback is so valuable to us.
Cheers, Jason.
No problem.
Any final questions? If you don't mind, we just sort of start. I'm not going to bring things to a close abruptly, but you know, if you have got any final questions before we start answering the last one or two, which are just trickling in, please feel free to type any others in the box. We have had a comment there. You know, I think they feel the common units would most likely be transferable to the apprenticeship standard. Yeah, I think you're right. Spot on there. We're hoping that that common code is transferable into the apprenticeship standard. There is a lot of other stuff in that core. That's one of the issues we're finding at the moment. When we're looking at such as the BSE core, I could comment on, it's also to ensure they can transfer into a higher level apprenticeship, or, you know, HNC or that sort of pathway as well. So it isn't just your normal common core to apprenticeships we'd expect to see a little bit extra in there, and that's where some of your curriculum areas, if you want to see what that content is, as Jason said earlier, get involved with us. We'll get you involved in the consultation and the feedback, and see the draft units and things like that. It works both ways. You get a heads up on what delivery might look like September 2021, and we get your valuable feedback to take that back, make any amends, and hopefully get this a fit for purpose product out there.
Thanks,
so any
Rob.
last questions, type them in.
Yeah, what I'll do, Rob, is I'll move to how the program's structured, if you don't mind. And would you like to talk through, because that came through on an earlier question?
Yes.
Which is this slide here.
Let me just put the question doc back so I can see the slide.
It was about how the syllabus is structured, you know, the qualification and all the other elements.
Yeah, no problem. So we sort of we've put this slide in the appendix because a lot of people, what we don't want to do from these webinars is just keep trolling over the same information. So apologies if you've not sort of been through this before, but seeing as it's been raised as a question, we'll quickly go through it. So the T-level program is 1,800 hours over 2 years. It's got UCAS points, and it'll be equivalent to 3 A levels. So we was given this structure, if you like, by IFATE, and then we're amplifying the content we've been given as well. So the core, that's going to be the BSc and the construction core, obviously, has got to be 20 to 50% of the total qualification time. It's graded A star to E. And as we've said earlier, it's going to be assessed by an external exam and then a substantial employer set project. So everybody will do the same employer set project across the country for BSc and for on-site, no matter which specialism they're going to then follow on to do in their second year, where they'll do the occupational specialism or specialisms or a pairing of now, as we've seen from today's slides. So again, that can be no less than 50% of the total qualification plan time, and it's to take them to threshold competency, and that's assessed by a synoptic assignment. So the bit in the black box there is the bit City and Guilds, and we're developing alongside yourselves and taking feedback from industry organisations, etc. So that's the qual, if you like. But then there's other things outside that qual which have to be built into that 1,800 hours. So you've got work placement. Now, them timeframes could be adjusted. The DFE are working on that work placement and what that looks like, the Department for Education, and that, you know, that structure is being trialed at the moment, but that's looking around 45 to 60 days, as you can see on that slide initially. And as I said, that's progressing in the taking feedback and developing how that might look. Now, the initial T levels have started kicking off. You've then got embedded in there, you've got your Maths and English. And then LTP there on the next little box is license to practice. So that could be stuff like our CSCS cards for construction and on-site and BSc. So that'll be embedded into the program as well, but it won't be part of the qual. So the requirements for assessment might, you know, the delivery, if you like, might be included in the qual, but that GLH can be sat outside the qual as well. That's your license to practice. And then also in there, you've got enrichment and tutorial as well. So inside the red box is the full specialism, and inside the black box is the bit City and Guilds are working on. That's the T-level qualification. Hope that answers your question.
There's just one to add to that, I think just a bit of clarification. So the 1,800 hours includes Maths, English and work placement. They're not additional.
Yes.
Yeah, may I just add to that? I think the only bit of information what's missing off there is that the qualification aspect is between 900 and 1,400 hours really, and the 1,800 hours is the overall program. So I hope that sort of clarifies that the TQ is between 900 and 1,400 hours.
Thanks for that, Mike. There's another one just on this. So will the license to practice non-completion exclude the awarding of the full T level? No, basically. It's an addition. Another one from Chris. We're talking to and working with transition year students and progressive students. What do we tell them? Who will join the T level in September 21? How do we best describe the progression opportunity? I think, you know, as with any program really, you know, the T level is there designed to support learners with regards to progression into employment, further education, further learning, higher education, or onto an apprenticeship. And that's what the progression looks like. And if they go into industry via an apprenticeship or direct, you know, that is where they will undertake further learning, further qualifications to ensure that they are vocationally competent at the end of it. You know, so this is what employers have asked for, this is what employers have created, and ultimately, you know, how them progression routes look are still to be ironed out. However, it isn't getting away from the fact that those are the progression opportunities for learners. I hope that answers that, Chris. It's a bit of a political response, unfortunately, but that is where we are at the minute. Unless my colleagues want to add anything to it.
No, I think that's answered it as best we probably could, Jason. I think we've got another one there as well. Will license to practice element of the programme, will non-completion of that prevent the awarding of the full T level? The answer is yes, they have to complete all required components. So the T-level qualification is just one element in that black box, if you like. Then they've got other elements as maths and English, license to practice, at work placement. They'll have to complete all elements to actually get the T-level awarded. So a few more seconds. We are 3 o'clock now. It is sort of time we put onto the webinar. So any final questions, we'll just give it a minute or so, just give you the last opportunity, or comments. Please put them in the box there and we'll try and get to them before we close. We have to try and keep to time on these because the webinar platform is very busy at the moment, as you can appreciate. So we have to try and make sure we give time for the next webinar to start and people to plan, etc. So we don't like running over too much. But any final questions, just give us a shout.
Yeah, I mean, there was a very quick question that's just come through around T-levels to replace the current existing offer. I mean, it's very, very difficult to answer that question in terms of a yes or a no right now, because things are changing all the time. But there is the notion going forward that there effectively will be 3 choices for learners at 16 on completion of school. So they will effectively do the academic route, which is A-levels. The second route is apprenticeships, and the third route is T-levels. So that's the vision. That's the government. That's ultimately the government's vision in terms of what the destination is post 16. So those are the 3 particular areas that that we are almost focusing on. So it will be T-levels, apprenticeships, and obviously A-levels. But obviously that will take time, because obviously we're only at kind of phase 2 at the moment. So phase 1 was the first construction and I think healthcare last year, and that is going to be launched in September 2020. So that was Pearson's construction. And then obviously you've got September 2021, which is on site and BSc. Now there are a number of other T-levels that are going to be launched between now and the next 5 years. But ultimately, I think when those 5 years have finished, the vision is that there will only be those 3 routes that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and just add to that what Salim said. So with regards to your level 3 offer, with regards to construction and BSc, this will be the only offer. So this will replace the current level 3 pathways and qualifications. This will be the only offer at level 3.
Thanks a lot, gents. I have been monitoring the questions tab. I can't see any further questions coming through, so I think we'll start and bring things to a close. Just thank you all for your time today. Appreciate it. I know it's tough trying to keep up with all the webinars and stuff at the moment. That's why we're trying not to sort of drag these on and give you any unnecessary information, and hopefully some new updates. So the ones we've planned in July, might not be a lot of changes till then, but we'll keep you abreast of anything which does. And then the other ones which are scheduled in, we appreciate your feedback along the way. If you want to get involved, it's qualdevelopment@cityandguilds.com, which was on the slide. So when you get the slides out there, if you want to get involved in that validation process, just to finish off, please give us a shout. That's how we're going to get it a fit for purpose product. Thanks a lot for your time, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.